What's up, guys? Welcome back to Tidal Gardens. This is the June 2023, I guess, that we're on live show. Hope you guys are doing all right. Yeah, it hasn't been that long since we last hung out. Like the May live show was only like a couple of weeks ago, but this particular June one was the only one that we could fit in to our schedule because we're doing a Reef to Reef show later. One of the weekends is also tied up. I've got like a guest from out of town. She's also like a Patreon donor for Tidal Gardens, and she is currently she is one of the people helping out with the Aquatic Expo right now that's in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so she's going to be coming here next week, and hopefully we'll film some videos for you guys. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty busy month of June. So yeah, you get a live show when we can fit it in, I guess. Like usual, we're starting off just a little bit early. Hopefully the audio is working okay. Hopefully the video stream is working okay. It looks like everything is right. Yeah, looks like it. So welcome all the early birds into chat. And real quick, I should say my thank yous. So first off, we've got two corporate sponsors. We have Ecotech Marine and we have Polyp Lab. So thank you to those two companies. And Polyp Lab in particular, we just re-upped for another 12-month arrangement with them. So thanks again. Real quick, let's go over the patrons on Patreon. All right, so thank you to Angela Sherman, Big Lord Chi, Brandy Camp, who hopefully will be here next weekend, Harkins Aquatics, Jeremy Altman, aka 2 Please, Scott Williams, Elaine Martinassi, Alan Jackson, Ann Lewis, Chuck Admire, Ernie Wallace, Greg Bauer, Greg Zimmerman, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Cal Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacry Fine Art, Lynn Holt, Michael Shelley, Puddle Aquatics, Ryan Baker, Sheena Owl, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. And on the YouTube member side of things, we have Keith Holland, Cvin13, JB Bryan, Terry Kuhn, Stories Reef, Herb777, Justin Harden, and 328 Reef. And obviously, thank you all for coming and hanging out with me as well. You might be wondering, what do these folks get? On the Patreon side, there is access to some high-resolution photos. And this was something that we had started a few years back. And it was brought to my attention by an artist friend that I had met at Aquashella. And so she's, Aquashella being a very art and music-centric trade show. And she does like a lot with Patreon. And she was saying how like a lot of artists are looking for source material that they have like digital rights to, meaning that to do artwork based on somebody else's like photography or something like that, you actually need permission to do it. So those are called reference images. And so we're offering like artists or anybody really those images for like super high resolution photos for artists' reference images. And some people just use it as like a background on their computer or their phone. So anyway, so that's what they get for that. There's a little bit of behind the scenes content, not as much as I was ever planning to, but hopefully in a little bit here, we're going to be doing a little bit more with like the behind the scenes stuff, because like the sort of stuff that we share on social is largely like images of corals and not as much of like just the day-to-day operations of stuff. So for example, this studio is so different than what you've recently seen it as. Like for example, many of you may have seen that there is a cloud ceiling, which is really cool in the studio. But one of the companies that's local to Northeast Ohio here is called Automute. And they do acoustic sound paneling for like professional studios and stuff like that. And so they do like both musicians recording studios. So there's a lot of like really famous musicians that they've worked with to do like their home studios or even like a professional like standalone studio. But they also do like corporate workspaces. So another local company here is like Audio Technica that does like the headphones. They have like a close like friend relationship, and so they're always constantly over at Audio Technica doing work. But they've also done work for like Google. They've done like Amazon headquarters, and they're local. And like the owner is like super cool. So I've been wanting to do a project with him to put sound paneling on my walls because their product is like highly decorative. It they can make it look like wood. They can make it look like stone, but it has a like professional level acoustics. So anyway, I've been meaning to do a project with him, but his product is super expensive. Also, like the most expensive stuff I think is like $20 to $30 per square foot, which is a lot if in a big room like this. But he came over, hooked me up with like the friends and family discount, even like helped install some of it just to show me how to do it. And yeah, so this place is looking and sounding really different. Like it was already getting to the point where it was super quiet, but we're getting into like the freakishly scary quiet territory now. But it looks gorgeous too. Like it's um again, I don't know exactly where I shared these photos to. It might just be public, but it might be membership only. But we have like really dark, it's like a dark stone textured walls now. Very cool. Okay, so hopefully everybody's having a good weekend. We're having a drought here in Ohio, so I'm like not doing yard work and stuff like that because I'm afraid that like I'm just gonna cut everything and it's just gonna die. We haven't had rain in what seems like a month, so I'm taking it easy and letting whatever grows grow. Okay, thanks you guys for letting me know that the audio is working. That was like a long diatribe of like random stories and stuff like that to not have anyone hear it. Diacanthus Reef. Support Tidal Gardens on Patreon. Thank you so much for throwing that link in there. Ben Knox from the UK. Hello. And Ricardo Garcia. Hello, Than. I enjoyed very much the BRS episode with you and Ryan. And now ready to do this live show. Awesome. So that was like a really good time that I spent up there because watching that video back again, I'm really happy with how it turned out because it was like Ryan and I have known each other for years, but we never spoke a lot. We only really talked maybe like 2-3 times tops, really. But we spent like the entire day together, and like the video content that we were recording was just so fluid. It's like we knew each other for like forever ever. And yeah, so like watching that video back, I was like super happy with how it came out just because the conversation literally needed no edit, start to finish. Was great. And that video was like an hour long, and we shot 8 of those back to back to back. Yeah, so I think that their plan is probably to release it roughly once every month. We talked about like a bunch of different topics, and I'm wondering like towards the end of that series if I'm going to be looking like awfully ragged because literally we're just like, okay, hit record and we're just going to talk and just keep it going. So yeah, so I literally shot for like 8 hours on camera that day. Pretty amazing. Okay, we got about 40 seconds or so, and then we'll start into the choral portion of the show. Thanks again for hanging out and coming in early. This should be a good one. Should be a good one. Let's see. Aqua Garden Zen. Hello from Eastern Washington. Hello. Port Wolf, also like echoing the BRS sentiment. Let's see. Hello, friends from China. Your coral breeding farms are excellent. Thank you. I have a friend that lives in China, and he's kind of like a world traveler type. He was born in the States, but ooh, hey, look at that. This is all wrong. Okay, hold on one sec. What the heck? Okay, let's try this again. Yeah, that was interesting, huh? We started off in the middle of the live stream. Okay, because I'm trying out a. Okay, first things first. My friend in China is Matt from Jiao Nation. He's kind of like a world traveler type. He's been living in China for like at least, what, 15 years now? But he's back in the States. I think he's doing some travel in Europe right now. But once he gets back from Europe, I want to hang out with him, bring him on like a live stream, and he's always a fun character to talk to. Now, as far as like the little technical snafu that happened, I'm trying some new stuff with this broadcast software because just my ability right there to like drag the video back and start it as to where I wanted to start it, that feature in how long have I been doing these streams? Like 8 years or something. That feature has never worked. But I think this latest iteration of the broadcast software, it's finally worked because apparently, let me just check the live real quick. Yeah, so far so good. I'll take it, right? But yeah, so that was glad I could glad it worked out and didn't start on like halfway through the show. VCA, Vivid Creative Aquatics. Hey, what is up? If you guys don't know what they produce, they have those 3D printed like flow nozzles, and we use several of those in our farm here. Aqua Garden Zen. What's everybody's thought on flasherasses? Let's see. It has been almost 20 years or so since I've at last had one. I was living in my parents' house at the time. That's how long ago that was. I thought they were the coolest thing, and then they started launching themselves out of my tank like very quickly. So if you do want to mess with flasherasses, definitely consider having a very robust type of cover for your aquarium because they are expert jumpers. There's certain wrasses that are just more prone to jumping. For example, we love yellow chorus wrasses, and they're supposed to be very good for controlling a lot of different pests. Things like Montipora eating nudibranchs and stuff like that. They're considered one of the better ones to do that. Unfortunately, that fish jumps a lot. We used to get a whole bunch of them, and we're basically down to one who, knock on wood, does not jump yet. He has not jumped yet, and we've had him for a long time in a tub that's very easy to jump out of. All of his other friends, in some way, shape, or form, have jumped. So flasherasses, prepare for the worst. Port Wolf, oh yeah, I've been in studio booths. It's crazy silent. Just your breath and pulse sounds so loud, it's madness. Yeah. So right now, the only thing that's generating noise in this whole room is the air conditioner that's in the corner. Like it's like a heater air conditioner unit, and me. And this room is enormous. Like, I guess enormous is a it depends on your frame of reference, right? But it is over 1,000 square feet. It might be closer to like 1,500 square feet. It's close to the size of my house. I live in like a small farmhouse up front. So this room is a lot of echoey space if I didn't do any sound treatment. But over the years, since I've done a lot of sound treatment, yeah, the entire thing is this really creepy level of quiet to the point that it's just really just you and your thoughts. And that might not be the best thing for some people, but for a work environment for me, I love it. Atkins Nature Aquarium. These are always the week before I get paid, but I love to watch. Awesome. Nope, I appreciate you hanging out. Let's see. Than, did you take down the Cipro video? Yes, I did. Long story short, there's just too much talk about how is it really hate? It's not really hate. It's like I don't know if the hobby generally is ready for that discussion because there's a lot of like dumb stuff being repeated about antibiotics, frankly. Um, and yeah, if you want to learn more about it, I guess like the place I would go, just read like Mike Pauletta's Reef Builders article about it, and read his experiences about it, because he's kind of like fleshed out his ideas more. But long story short, I really like it. I like it a lot. Let's see. A lid is a must for flashers. Yes. Mine tried to launch himself into orbit a few times. That's kind of the problem with certain fish, and you have to kind of know these things going in, right? Because if you don't know, there's certain fish that are so cool, but they're notorious jumpers. I think that my flasher wrasses started jumping within about 45 minutes of being introduced. Um, and again, this was a very long time ago. But there's like a type of fish that I really, really, really want to get eventually. I've never tried this entire type of animal before, but they're called tilefish. And in particular, I want a flashing tilefish. If you don't know what I'm talking about, do a Google search, find a video about what a flashing tilefish is. It's kind of like a cigar-shaped fish. Kind of has like a blunt nose, kind of like a sperm whale sort of thing. Like like I guess like the physical characteristics there, nothing to write home about. It's kind of like a long cigar-shaped fish. But the cool thing about flashing tilefish in particular is that they can change color really rapidly, and they can change from like blues to pinks to yellows, that sort of thing. Um, and I think that they're kind of like puffers in that regard, where it's like you probably don't want them flashing all the time because that's kind of, it might be like a stress indicator. So if you have like a puffer fish that's always like puffing, it's like you're probably a horrible hobbyist. But anyway, I've never kept that fish before. And going back to the whole thing about covers and knowing what you're getting yourself into, supposedly those tilefish in particular are notorious jumpers, and they're expensive. So if you buy a school of these things, because they have to be kind of kept in schools, that's a lot of money, and it's entirely possible for like you to get like, let's say like a dozen, 2 dozen of these things, spend several house payments worth of money on these fish, and then you go out to the grocery store, come back, and all of them are on your floor dead. Like that can happen. So yeah, whenever you're choosing fish like that, yeah, again, know what you're getting yourself into. Courtney Jameson. Hey, Dan. Been a minute since I've caught a live. Well, welcome back, Courtney. Nice to see you again. Okay. John Corky. Do you have a platy cakes yet? Love it. I want some. Okay, we still have some. They're growing. Excuse me. The only problem that we're having is that they're a little bit down colored. And so we're kind of just, we don't want to offer the a coral for sale when it's not like peak coloration, essentially, because that's just not what you guys are expecting. That's not what we really want to just be putting out there just for the sake of like making a sale. But yeah, I mean, I think that if I acquire a little bit more from Nathan, like that's who like I know that we've bought some from him before, so I'm always asking him, like, okay, do you have like X, Y, and Z corals? Because I will always buy that from him. But so hopefully he's got something for me. And those are like better coloration than the ones that we've been growing. But yes, hopefully we will have some soon. Might be optimistic. Soon might be optimistic. Flashing tilefish or the cuttlefish octopus fish. Do you mean that they don't live long, or that they're changing color? You're probably meaning changing color, because when I think of octopus, I think of like something that's like super cool, super intelligent, and their natural lifespan is like 12 months, and you probably got it on month 6. So you have like 6 months tops before that thing just ages out. Okay. Ryan Felt. Any advice on how to handle humidity? Going to be moving my large tank to the basement. This is going to sound really, really obvious, but I know exactly the kind of mental gymnastics that you might be going through. You're going to need to get a dehumidifier. It is going to be the cheapest and the easiest thing for you to do. When I first built this building, we didn't really have the money on day 0 to do all the HVAC correctly. One could argue that in order for somebody to do a building like this, to really do it right from the get-go, it's a 6-figure project just for the HVAC, right? And back then, that's just not happening. So in the greenhouse, and again, I'm also coming from greenhouse land, where we really leveraged like air exchange, like very aggressively, that sort of thing. But this is not a greenhouse. What we did initially was since we have 2 floors, we installed a lot of exhaust fans. So there's probably like 1,000 CFM spread out amongst like a bunch of different fans and a bunch of different like just different areas to just extract air at the top of this building and send it directly out. It's good. We still use them. We still use them like 24/7. There's always air extraction going on in here. Then we installed air exchangers. So those would be like HRVs or ERVs. And what they do is they kind of like the outgoing air either cools or heats the incoming air, so you can have like constant air exchange, but without it affecting the temperature of the building. There's 4 of those. Then it became very clear once we started to use a lot of lighting that we needed to have air conditioning. And that air conditioning, again, started to help cool the building down, but it also drew down the humidity, because I think that on its worst day, this place used to have like 80% humidity. Clearly, you cannot have 80% humidity in a building like this. You will get black mold and you will not have a building anymore. So finally, we ended up getting like commercial dehumidifiers. And now our humidity is under 50% most days. So long story short, you do not need a commercial dehumidifier for your basement, I don't think. But just get like a couple of dehumidifier units and you should be fine. And just have it drain into whatever. Like if you have drains, that's great. If you have a sump pump, send it down there. It'll go a long way. Port Wolf, Than, holler at Elliot from Marine Collectors. He walks a lot of fish, or he walks a lot of fish importers and can probably find it. Yeah, he might be able to. So I've talked with Elliot just a little bit on like through like a messaging system. If I ever get really serious about fish ever, I'll definitely pick his brain on some stuff. He seems to be going about it the right way. His price point for me might not be something I can afford, but I fully appreciate the service that he's providing. So like Elliot will take he will take fish and get it completely through quarantine for you. Make sure that they're eating and everything like that, which is like practically the whole battle. And especially with like delicate species, you want to have like that sort of hand holding. But that is not free. That absolutely is a value add. And if you need like a dozen flashing tilefish, that is something I cannot afford. I mean, that's going to be more expensive than a Tesla probably. Like that. Okay. Than. Any tips on beating cyano before I start my water change and take a bunch out before I treat it with chemiclean? So, cyano is one of those weird things. Like, I think that it's been largely misunderstood. And even in my chemiclean video back in the day, I might have misunderstood it. So I hate saying this because it's dumb and it's kind of not meaningful, but I typically don't have an issue with cyano. And the reason is not to say, oh, it's because I'm a good hobbyist. No. It's because I think that cyano tends to present itself in a very specific condition of your aquarium. Usually it'll be a newer aquarium. Usually it'll be a really clean aquarium that has like pockets of high nutrient that's kind of isolated. So for example, you will see it on your rocks. You will see it on your substrate, things like that, right? Because the water column itself might have like bottomed out 0 nitrate, 0 phosphate. But because you have these nutrient-rich substrates, like your sand, like your rock, that's like the perfect environment for cyano to grow. And I think that a lot of times what people tend to do is that they over-filter their water, trying to battle cyano to try to make the water even cleaner. And that kind of just adds more fuel to the fire. So I guess like my recommendation is to really be patient with the process and try to get, I don't know what your nutrients are, but if you had like a nitrate level hovering around 10 and a phosphate level hovering at like 0.1, I mean, so like higher, right? Like slightly elevated. Nothing too crazy to the point where like the corals might be like side-eyeing you, but just get off of 0. And I think that like cyano especially will diminish in that environment. The other thing is you can increase flow, because a lot of times what it's doing is it's growing on like a patch of detritus somewhere, because it really likes that. So if you have like a detritus pile building up, sometimes you will have just like a patch of like red slime starting to grow right then and there. So that's kind of what I would do before doing whole tank treatments. I know that like I did talk about the whole tank treatment thing recently. It's something that I've only recently been warming up to at all, because when I was a hobbyist and did this stuff in like a 100-gallon-ish size, it was way easier just to do really acute treatments of stuff, like do spot cleanings and things. And it's only when you get into like the thousands and thousands of gallons where like that type of elbow grease doesn't scale up. So that's when you have to like do these other things. If it were me, I think that you might have more issues with chemiclean than just, and again, I don't know the size of your tank, but there's like just patience in doing these other things might get you where you want to go with less risk. David Garcia Jr. Hello, Than. Do you have any tips on hydroid control and removal? Thank you. This goes back to that same sort of discussion with chemiclean. Hydroids are surprisingly slow growing. Once they get established, they're really good at sticking around, but they're not fast. So I would literally get like tweezers, like the stuff that you might like pluck your like eyebrows or like nose hair with, that sort of stuff, just at a grocery store, and literally just spend some time every single time you look at your aquarium, take out a little batch of it, just little by little, just work away at it, because I think that your ability to remove it greatly outpaces their ability to reproduce. So if you just, again, elbow grease that stuff, it'll be fine. And we don't hydroids. Do we have a lot of hydroids? We might not have very many at all. I don't remember seeing hydroids here in a really long time. What we would do at scale would be we would take whatever rock set they're on and just like kill the rock, like the entire rock would just kill, and then put it back. And so obviously doing something like that, like that's a drastic step. That'll definitely kill hydroids. Cannibal Holiday. Nice name. My red Monty cap mysteriously bleached out completely in a matter of 2 weeks. There could be a number of things going on there, right? Usually that, like a red Monty cap doesn't kind of just crash on its own. So either there's something weird chemically going on, or it's being eaten by nudibranchs. But that'll get it done quick. So those are the two things that I would look at. Martin Pace, can you open a UK store, please? Hello from the UK. It might not be possible. I mean, I can barely keep my place running smoothly. I can't imagine also running a place in the UK. Seeing that I've been to the UK twice in my whole life, I might be a very absentee landlord there. Cannibal Holiday. My dead Monty didn't come from Than, just clarifying. We've got a lot of it if anybody wants any. Veterans Farming Initiative. What are your thoughts on evaporation lids like the one from Toplids? I've never used it. I'm actually not familiar with the product at all. Will they truly interfere with gas exchange considering skimmer operation and overflow? I mean, lids in general will. Like if you just look at, so for example, we have some fish quarantine tanks, and the ones with lids you practically don't have to top off. The ones without lids, quite a bit of evaporation and air exchange. So it wouldn't surprise me, if you did have some issues with that. How that's going to manifest in your tank, I don't know. Probably not a big deal because plenty of people have lids. Where I think lids might struggle more is with lighting. Whenever we did mess with any kind of lighting with a lid, it's a shocking amount of par that you lose. 3 Recordias, same area. 2 are shrinking and are contracted. It could be the main cause of this. Recordia tend to be pretty stable. So that makes me wonder if either something is bothering it, whether it's like, is it an infection? Is it pods? Like, I think that we as hobbyists over the years kind of have this like love affair with pods, but they're omnivores and they'll mess with stuff. And a lot of corals that were previously struggling tended to do better when we started killing pods. That's kind of like a little anecdote there. Also, like if you're trying to, this is a total aside, but if you're trying to grow the Aptasia eating nudibranchs, you have to kill your pods because the pods eat the eggs and small nudibranchs. They don't kill the Montipora eating ones though. They only eat the Aptasia eating ones. Go figure. The other thing that might be annoying them, I mean, it could just be location based. Is it getting too much flow? Is it getting like sand on it too much? It could be any number of things. I'm trying to picture the look on your face plucking nose hairs. It's probably not that flattering. Jordan M. Pachyceras care tips, basically the same as Monty's, I guess. I guess I wouldn't really separate it out from any of those types of stony corals. Pachyceras are way slower growing though, so you probably don't have to worry about placement nearly as much because it is not going to impact your aquascape nearly as much as something like a Montipora. But as far as care, yeah, I wouldn't really do anything husbandry wise to separate it out. Dan Larman, referring to your recent video with Ryan Ryan at BRS about keeping sea fans. Randy was like the co-host that's now doing like AR-15 content. I forget what his channel is, something tactical. Anyway, see some for sale here today. Any advice for someone considering getting one? Okay, so really, there are two different universes when it comes to Gorgs. So there's the stuff that's coming out of Florida, and you can tell they're coming out of Florida because they'll be, like under $50, let's say. They are generally speaking some variety of like tan, maybe brown, maybe purple. That type of color scheme. They're going to be readily available, and they are very likely all going to be photosynthetic. Okay. They're super easy to keep. When you get into stuff that looks insanely brightly colored, like it has blue polyps, or it's like red body, yellow polyps, or looks like a freaking rainbow, okay? Those are going to be likely from Indonesia or Australia. They're going to be non-photosynthetic and darn near impossible for you to keep unless you have such a specialized system that does well with that. And I have never seen a system do well with that. Like maybe something that a public aquarium could do if they had available access to the ocean, like Waikiki Aquarium, where they're bringing in lots of ocean water, flushing it through like some sterilization, and then using that in their systems. They might have some success with that because it's like the amount that you have to feed a filter feeding gorgonian is insane. So you not only need to have access to exactly what they eat, which might be species by species different. Okay, so keep that in mind too. And then the quantities that you would need and your ability to evacuate all that waste product when you're done. And these things are feeding all the time. So yeah, if you can stick with like the more boring looking Caribbean varieties, try to do that because you'll have a lot more success. Okay, Ryan Felt, can you talk about what test kits, auto water testing machines you use? Okay, we use a lot of sailor fruit test kits. We use the Hannah egg for certain things, and for certain stuff that, for certain like industrial applications, like when we were trying to test our chlorine levels going through our water treatment plant, that's like some professional stuff like Hach, H-A-C-H, like the German brand. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. We occasionally send out ICPs, and we've used a couple of different brands of ICP, and so far I think we're settling in a little bit on Reef Labs. I think that's the name of it. Reef Labs. As far as auto testing, that's one of those like paradigms that just simply has not worked out well here. I know that for home hobbyists, it could likely make a lot of sense. It's one of those things where it's a finicky enough machine because we've used GHL, we've used Alcatronic, we used Neptune, we might have used some other thing that I'm even forgetting off the top of my head, but we've used like a number of auto testing type devices, and not just one. Like we've multiples of each. Long story short, there is that when you have to operate so many different systems, they're not maintenance-free devices. There's like sometimes an error code happens. Sometimes you're low on certain reagents. Sometimes there's a clog in a tube. Something. There's always like, or like you need to calibrate the probes. All kinds of stuff constantly needs monitoring in its own right. My initial thought with those was, well, if they live up to expectations, I want more of our time spent talking and analyzing results like of all this chemistry rather than sitting and doing the chemistry tests themselves. But it got to a point where like the machines needed more maintenance than it would have just been just to do the tests. So now we just do the tests. Hopefully in the future, I guess for like more industrial applications like what we do, there's going to be like a more robust way to do those types of things because uh, it has to be like rock solid, stable, easy, and just works. Because once you get to a point where you can't trust the numbers and throw up an error code, I'll basically ignore that that machine exists forever. Like I think that one of these machines had like an error code, and we just let it just sit there for like a year. We just never even like bothered. So, in practice, so in theory, seems like a really good idea, and for home hobbies it might be. In practice here, industrially, didn't work out. Okay. So going back to our talk about cyano, nitrate's 10, that's fine. Phosphate is low. So yeah, you might want to, I don't know, feed a little bit of nori or something, just bring up the phosphate just a little bit. Oh, and for the folks that were asking about Gorgonians earlier, we're in the Gorgonian section of the show. These are all from Florida, that Florida area. Okay, David E. Than, what alkalinity, calcium, magnesium levels do you typically keep your tanks at Tidal guards? Okay, so there's a range, right? But long story short, there we're trying to more or less mimic natural seawater levels. Um, right now, I would say our calcium is a little higher than normal. It's like in the 450-ish range. Magnesium levels slightly lower than usual. They're about 1200, 1250. And that's really easy for us to fix because we run calcium reactors, and there's like a calcium reactor media called ARM, which is aragonite reactor media, that tends to be higher in magnesium. Like on the packaging it says like high magnesium formula. We just put a little bit more of that in the mix, and the magnesium levels take care of themselves. Alkalinity tends to be a little bit lower, which ironically is more in line with what we see in oceans. Like the alkalinity in the ocean is like 7 or 8, and while we shoot for like 8 or 9, right now I'd say it's roughly like 7 or 8. Makukam, how are new color morphs developed? They're not developed. Is it husbandry or wild specimens coming into the trade? It's wild specimens coming into the trade. But I mean, so can you develop different coloration? Absolutely, right? Certain things are going to be more adaptable than others color-wise. Like acros, for example. You do anything different, acros are changing colors. If you have like an elegance coral, do a whole bunch of different stuff, it's going to look like an elegance. It's going to look like the day you got it, right? So there's it really depends on what type of coral you're talking about as to like what you're going to be able to affect husbandry wise. Okay, VCA. Speaking of Monty eating nudies, how do you deal with that in an established reef? Good question. If I had an issue with that, so the first thing is if you have the predators for it, you might always have the nudibranchs, but it might never really be a problem. Okay, I wouldn't be in like a huge hurry to try to like sell or give away those things, the nudies, the Monties with the nudies on them. But if you have like a variety of different wrasses, like you've got your Melanaris, you've got your possum wrasse, you've got like a Timor wrasse, maybe you got lucky and you got a leopard to survive, that sort of thing. Just like a 6-line, just different wrasses. There's a good chance that they will eat enough of those things that your Monty colonies will really not show any issues. You might always have like a low level of these nudies in your tanks. Other option, if you wanted to really get rid of them, you take out all your Monties and you leave them out of your tank for a year, that'll probably do it. Because the Monty eating nudibranchs are obligate, like Monty-avores, right? They really only eat those. And the problem with taking out those colonies, dipping them, scraping the eggs, whatever you want to do, and putting them back, is that those Monties, or those Monty eating nudibranchs, they travel. They're in your piping, they're in your sump. They can just like they can hover for a while. They go for strolls. And so once you put those freshly cleaned up, polished up things back into your tank, you will get Monty eating nudibranchs again. So to really do away with it, you're gonna have to like let your reef follow. And you might be surprised at like some of the things that they also eat. Like I just said that they are obligate carnivores of Montes, but I've also seen them eat Anacropora. So there might be some like closer connection between those two corals than we originally thought. GLR, I've been battling dinos for a few months now. I've been on my second round of Dino X treatments. Do you have any suggestions for me to finally win this battle? Again, I think I mean, for a few months, it's really not a lot of time, frankly, to be dealing with dinos. Um, if it were me, I'd pay close attention to the nutrient levels. My guess is your nutrient levels are probably too low. Um, yeah, look at that first before trying to do a lot of the chemical treatments, because I think that some combination of slightly elevated nutrients and manual removal will go a long way. Real quick, I'm just gonna skip ahead to the super chat real quick. Reef Exotico by Luis Aceves. Hopefully I just didn't butcher your name. Thank you so much for the 9.99 super chat. Hey Than. Recently lost all my fish to velvet. Interesting on its own, that comment. No bioload is affecting my corals now. Going fallow for 72 days. Will coral dips kill velvet? Want to transfer nicer corals to another tank. Suggestions. Hate to hit you with this, but I know almost nothing when it comes to fish pathogens. Almost nothing. What would I do if I was in your situation? I would reach out to some of my friends that do a lot of dealing with fish diseases. You might want to reach out to Elliot at Marine Collectors and see what he would do for velvet. Because here's the thing about velvet: it's like ridiculous. It's like Ebola. It's like ridiculously aggressive, right? Like kill your fish in like a few days aggressive. Going fallow. See, I don't know the life cycle of velvet. Um, I don't think that it can just hang out on corals like that. It's not a I don't think it's a protozoan like ick is. Yeah. I wish I had better answers for you. And I think that giving you the wrong answer is worse than just saying I just don't know. And this is how ignorant of velvet I am. In 20 something years I've never had anything come down with velvet because I just never dealt with that many fish in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, definitely talk to somebody that deals with like a lot of fish, because like they will know like right away if it was velvet at all. They'll know exactly how to go about sterilizing their tanks and what to do about the corals. But yeah, I don't even know what would kill velvet, because I'm thinking like, would like a heavy dose of ozone kill it? Would And it depends on what dip you're talking about too. Like, would tea tree oil type ones do it, or do you need something like a lot more aggressive? Like, I just don't know. So sorry about that. Okay, catching up a little bit with chat. Tie. I have a hammer coral that still fully extends, but the tentacles are like kind of shriveling up. Any thoughts? Um, it could be flow related. It could be flow related. It could be nutrient related. Because like typically we don't go out of our way to feed hammers or anything like that. And the only other thing I can think of is sometimes like hammers, torches, and frog spawn, they have an issue with bugs that you can't really see. But when we bug bombed our tank with Interceptor, uh, it was amazing at how big the hammers, torches, and frog spawn got. So what I might even suggest you do is I don't know if you can like get like a magnifying glass or something and take a really close look to see if there's any kind of like bugs hanging out on the polyp. Chances are those bugs won't kill the coral at all, but it's annoying enough that it might show up in the tentacles. Because like right now, if you saw our like Euphilia, Fimbriophilia show tank, you'd be like mind blown at how big the tentacles are. Like they're enormous, like truly enormous. And I think part of that is it's just because we've been doing like all kinds of like crazy whole tank treatments and just like knocking swaths of population stuff out, including pretty much every single pod in the system. Vasco, I've been experimenting with UVA UVB on my Acro system. Do you have any thoughts on true UV use on lighting? I'm following the full spectrum light. They seem to love it. The light lover Acro, of course. I don't know. I don't know, because there's plenty of studies that show that, like, generally speaking, UV is not good, right? Like most things when exposed to UVA and UVB tend to die more. But there's also some studies that show that like there's certain corals, certain anemones that are particularly susceptible to bacterial infections and stuff like that, specifically in home aquariums. But they don't have these issues in the wild nearly so much. And this is just like my random observation on this. But if you're talking about acros and you're talking about specifically anemones like Riteri and carpets, I've seen Riteris and I've seen carpets and I've seen these acros in the wild diving in Japan. And a lot of them get exposed to direct sunlight. They were already shallow, right? And by the way, UVA, UVB, basically beyond like 15 feet, it's gone. So it only affects like the shallow corals. But I've noticed that during like low tide, these corals and these anemones are exposed to just air for hours. Like they're just sitting there, just soaking up direct sunlight. And I have a feeling that that the UV that they're receiving there might be having like an antiseptic effect on them, because these things, like especially like Riteri anemones, those are like the Heteractis magnifica, like the enormous, like, you know, clown hosting anemones. They have for decades now done very, very poorly, and they usually just like get an infection and die. And so I'm wondering if like that is a component, that this like UV component does play a part in that. I mean, that's not necessarily just my idea. Like that's been echoed, but that is one observation I did make on the reef. Is like sometimes, and also granted, stuff that happens in the wild doesn't necessarily translate to what happens in your aquariums, right? Like clams are practically bulletproof in the wild. They are not bulletproof in my systems. Reefbot? Question mark? No, I've never used a Reefbot. Okay, moving on. Cannibal Holiday. I was given a free CJ reactor by the LFS. I don't have it set up. Need to right now, but would make for a fun rotor for a brine shrimp tank. Good. It's could be a lot of work. Could be a lot of work. Yeah, VCA, thanks for the info about the Monteport eating nudibranchs. Never seem to get rid of them, even between tanks. Yeah, you might be like blown away by this, but we have friends, you know, in the industry, and they'll have like 10 tanks with a single sump, they will have like, let's say some Monties in tank number 2, and if they see one nudibranch, it'll be in every single tank right after that. Like they have no problem just like going through all the plumbing, and we're not talking about like a little bit of plumbing. We're talking about like 80 feet of plumbing to get to the next tank. Like it's bonkers like how good they are at getting around. Luis, I'm Jake and Windsor's friend, the bean guy. Aw, what is up? Thank you. Now I'm hungry. Now it's like, you know what does sound good tonight? Mexican food. But it's gonna be garbage here because I live in Ohio. I don't get good Mexican food. So Luis, this was my first trip to Reef Builders. Like Jake Windsor and I, we went to Luis's restaurant, and it was like such a good time. And Luis made like these really authentic refried beans that were just the most ridiculously delicious beans I've ever had in my whole life. David, Dan, at what rate would you recommend acclimating corals to higher light? Example, moving a frag up, how much par? So we just play it by just we just eyeball it because a lot of times it depends so much on the system itself. You definitely don't want to overdo it because lighting for the most part, good enough is gonna be good enough. Like there's very few instances where it's like, boy, because you didn't move that coral up into brighter light, now it's dying. That almost never happens. Really, the where you run into more with lighting issues is when you have like a lot of LED that's highly directional and you have shadowing going on. Like shadowing is bad, but light intensity for the sake of light intensity, it plays less of a part than you might think. So just play it by ear, like eyeball it, right? But the other thing is like sometimes people like freak out about it when they're talking about like a tiny tank. Like if they have a nano and talking about moving it from like, like from the sand layer like this far up, like it's not going to matter. But shadowing definitely something to pay attention to because if you have an SPS, you have your SPS here, like this part here under LED, it is going to be black. It's going to die right here. So that's why people have the lights angled and have more lights and strips and stuff. It's specifically to deal with that. Curious observation I made this week, and I wish I had my camera, but I witnessed one of my peppermints grab a bristle worm and start ripping it up. I didn't know why they did that. Very likely they just wanted to eat it. Like peppermints they're omnivores. They'll eat a whole bunch of stuff. Let's see. Ty Hinsky. Yes, I do have some red planaria. Planning on dipping. Just wanted to see if that was the culprit. Um, me. So I kind of don't worry about red planaria. The only time that red planaria becomes a really big problem is when they get into plague-like proportions, and then you decide to try to do something about it. Because they, when they die from a whole tank treatment, they release toxins, and those toxins can kill both fish and coral. So what I would try to do as much as possible is that whenever you're doing water changes and stuff, just try to siphon them out. And then if you one day decide to do a treatment of some sort to like really bring down their numbers, the impact of that treatment won't kill so many of them all at once. But like siphoning them up as you go does wonders. Also, having predators of them helps out a lot. They're jerks, but damsels do a good job on red planaria. Trying to keep red planaria out of your system entirely, good luck with that. Um, Good luck. Because it's not just a matter of dipping and quarantining corals. You have to like quarantine all your cleanup crew and everything. They'll come in all kinds of stuff. Luckily, they're for the most part harmless. They're just kind of unsightly, and again, you don't want to get into a situation where it's like, oh, you nuked your tank with something, all of those things died all at once, and now everything is like huffing and puffing and barely holding on. Cannibal Holiday. I'd kill for a churro truck or something here, but Canada is all fry trucks and poutine. I think depending on which city you live in, you might be in a better food area. Dude, Ohio is kind of like where a lot of cuisine goes to die. Now, I say that like super broadly and unfairly because they're like one of my favorite restaurants of all time is 30 minutes from my house, and it is crazy good. Like, it is Michelin star good. And I know it's Michelin star good because they have hired and fired multiple Michelin starred chefs because they weren't good enough. And it is fancy, but it's not like inaccessibly fancy. So it's not like 3-star Michelin Joël Robuchon, right? It's not like that, where like every single thing you get at Robuchon is going to be weird. It's going to be challenging. It's like it's not for everybody. But like this place is like a breakfast place. But every single thing I've ever ordered from them has been like a banger. Like it's just they never miss. And it's like a slightly Bavarian cuisine. It's like freaking amazing. But outside of like these little pockets of like one-offs, everything is Applebee's. I mean, you have like Mexican Applebee's, you have like Italian Applebee's, you have like sandwich making Applebee's. I mean, it's just everywhere as far as the eye can see. I'd settle for a good food truck right about now. Like, we don't even get good food trucks. Okay, thanks to your tips, I love my Canon C100 with 24 to 105. What are you using now? We still use our C200, but I also got a Canon C70, which is a different lens mount. It is the RF lens mount. So dummy me, I get to buy all of the lenses again. But so far I'm liking it quite a lot. That's the camera that I'm looking into right now. It is kind of like a C200. It's in a smaller profile, and it uses a different lens system, which is kind of nice. It's a mirrorless system. The only thing that I don't like about it is that there's two things I don't like about it. One is the audio input. We use professional microphones, so having like a full-size XLR is nice. This thing here has mini XLR, so I need to like have an adapter, so it adds more bulk. The other thing I don't like about it is that the way that you mount a base plate to it in order to lock it in is it is left to right, not front to back. Whereas everything else that we use is front to back. So I needed to buy another thing to like make it, 90 degrees, so it just locks into all of our different tripods and stuff. Let's see. Dan Lerman. Is it possible to visit your place to buy core without pre-purchasing? Yes, it is. During like the pandemic years, nobody got into this place for like 3 years, but now we do appointments. So if you just want to send us an email support@tidalgardens.com. We'll try to work out a time for you to come in. Dances with fishes. Dan, see above comment. I'm assuming that's the one about pre-purchasing and showing up for an appointment. Let's see. Kyle Jameson, there's some Mexican joints in Youngstown if you know where to look. That's where I'm from, and I live in Tucson now. Nice. I went to Tucson. I think it was like literally like last year, and I remember eating some Mexican food there, and I was like offended at how good it was compared to what we get here. Like I think I had some enchiladas, and it was like trying like Luis's beans. I was like, why is it this good? Like you would think that this dish could be done just like this near me. Like what is it about? Like why is it that like when I order enchiladas here, it's all Mexican Applebee's? Like you're going through the effort of cooking it anyway. Like, can you just like do it like better? I mean, I can't imagine that like the ingredients are different. They look like the same ingredients. It's just something is lost in translation, right? Jordan M, do you think you'll ever host a barbecue event again in the future? I don't know. I don't know. I can't think of another reason to travel to Ohio. Short of like Cedar Point, there's not a great reason to travel here. I mean, I travel to Ohio because I live here. Um, I don't know. That's a toughie. Maybe. It might be one of those situations where like, uh, I don't know. That's a toughie. Unlikely. Unlikely is a word. Ohio is sponsored by Applebee's. Yeah, Applebee's are the bubble algae of restaurants. Yeah, it's like everything that light touches is our kingdom. Applebee's. Yes. Spitty's some good food up Cleveland way. Yes, I agree. There's like a handful of Cleveland restaurants. I just don't get to Cleveland very often. I'm gonna be going to Cleveland like next weekend because I'm going to see a show, so I kind of have to go to Cleveland for that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of like, there's a lot of good. There's probably like a dozen like truly really good Cleveland restaurants I can think of. Vasco, are you shipping corals to Europe? Unfortunately, I'm not. This is U.S. only. Dan the man, speaking the truth. Thanks again. Hoping to get some corals from you when I set up my 91 gallon up to a month. In a month, tank is too packed right now. I understand. I do have a mystery wrasse and blue chromas. Maybe they help. Yeah, mystery wrasse are cool. The only problem is that they eat shrimp, and sometimes shrimp are nice to have. Yeah. So let's see. What places in Cleveland are good to eat? Because I should probably think about this before I go to the show, so I'm not wondering where I should have gotten reservations. Like, uh, I okay, so there's a couple of gems, right? Like the best sushi in town is probably like either Ginkgo or Goma, owned by the same dude. I've been to both of those places. Legitimately good stuff. Um, there's what's that place in Ohio City that's pretty good? I'm blanking. There's the Velvet Tango Room, which it's like this little it's like a little speakeasy in the hood, and it's literally like burned down. Okay, so this is a while ago since I've been there, but it's like looks like burned down abandoned buildings everywhere, and there's like this little what looks like a house, but that is a cocktail bar called the Velvet Tango Room, and they have like world class jazz musicians there that they like literally played with like John Coltrane and stuff like that, and they have like the most authentic cocktails, like historic cocktails, like old fashions and like was like the French 45s and like all those types of like historic drinks, and they make everything from scratch, like the bitters, everything is like made there right in front of your face, and it is where I learned that, oh, that's why people like these drinks, because this is what these drinks are supposed to be like. They're incredibly good. They're expensive though. And just as a little funny story, the first time I ever went there, I ordered a coffee. I went to one of like the nicest cocktail bars in the state, and I ordered a coffee because I just didn't know. Didn't know. If you can't find it, cook it. I'm sure they'll teach you. Yeah. See, the problem with that is like I'm a single guy. Like we don't really cook very much. I used to cook, less so these days. Uh, Thanks, Dan. Your coral feeding videos are National Geographic Pro level. You have great authentic food here. Oh, we have great authentic food here in St. Louis. I've only been to St. Louis once. All I know about St. Louis is like barbecue. Um, okay, just in chat here. You know what I need to do? Okay, I need to like do. I'm gonna engage with my audience here. I'm gonna start a poll. This is so random, you guys. All right, barbecue. Since people are asking about barbecue, I'm gonna host a barbecue. You're gonna get Applebee's barbecue. Okay, so just look out for that. Barbecue. Who does it best? So, I need to do a poll. How do I add options? Okay, so yes, no. This is not no. No. How do I? Okay, no, this is stupid, guys. Hold on. Let me redo this. Okay, I'm gonna do a poll. Start a poll. Okay, I don't know why yes no is defaulted. Okay, BBQ, who does it best? Okay, so the options are yes, no, which are clearly the wrong answers. We have Kansas City. We have Texas. We have. Are you serious right now? Okay, I've got 4 options, and 2 of them are yes, no. Why am I this bad at this, guys? What am I doing wrong? Okay, so yes is going to be St. Louis. No is going to be Carolina, and Kansas City and Texas are self-explanatory. All right, guys. What did I say? Yes, St. Louis barbecue. No is the other thing. Is the Carolinas, and we have Texas, and we have Kansas City. Those are your choices. I would have thrown Applebee's in there, but I didn't have a 5th option for the poll. So y'all have fun with that. You let me know. Because I've had Kansas City barbecue. It was really damn good. I've had Texas barbecue. Pretty damn good. I've heard Carolina barbecue's trash. So I don't know. Let's see. Kansas City is known for barbecue. We are known for Italian and others. I think in Cleveland, Cleveland is known for like Polish stuff, like a lot of pierogies and stuff. That's not really my jam. It's all right. I've had decent pierogies, I guess. Blue Point Grill. I've been there. Yeah. Velvet Tango Room is definitely awesome. Great atmosphere. Yeah. Fan, grandmother taught me, been cooking since I could walk. Not impossible. Let's see. Can you please check my question on the use of antibiotics? Thank you for your trouble. I don't want to talk about antibiotics. So I will refer you to the Reef Builders article that Mike Paletta wrote. He can go into much greater depth on his experience with it than I will. St. Louis ribs are unmatched. North Carolina is good for pig roast. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Kind of a weird question. Do you know of any coral for a low salinity aquarium? I don't. You might want to do some research on like brackish water, but I have a feeling that your choices might be limited to like algae and stuff like that, which can be cool, which could be a really, really cool theme aquarium, but I don't know of any corals for that. So one time I was in Mexico, and there was like this really cool, kind of like a nature adventure park. And I think it's called like Ishkaret. It starts with an X, I think. And what they do is they drop you off at like the mouth, or not a mouth, I guess it's like the start of like a freshwater cenote, right? Which is like an underground river. And when you jump into there, it's like there's like all these, you know, mangrove trees and everything like that growing there, and there's all these like freshwater fish. But as you progress down this river towards the ocean, towards the sea, it gets progressively more brackish. And so like under in those situations you're still seeing a lot of mangroves, but now you're seeing like those upside down jellyfish and stuff like that. And then as you progress towards the ocean, now you're seeing stingrays. And then finally, once you're like in full saltwater, you're seeing like the saltwater fish and like the Caribbean corals and sea fans and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. But it's interesting to see like that progression of like the different like those little different zones of life. All right, guys, get your last bits of votes into my janky my janky poll here, okay? I'll give you guys a couple more minutes left, and then I'm gonna see how badly Texas won this poll probably. Okay. Besides algae, yeah, exactly. I think your choices are basically algae, mangroves, and maybe an upside down jellyfish, which might just be saltwater. I don't really know. Diacanthus. I like to cook. I hate to cook what I don't want to eat. It's usually the latter, so I probably don't like to cook. I like to eat. What is the salinity of brackish? Dude, I don't even know. Like I've literally never kept a brackish tank. My guess, 1.019 type of like specific gravity is I would consider like pretty low. Don't some torches live in areas where salinity fluctuates to brackish levels? Possibly. That's one of those places that you just kind of have to see. Like, a lot of the torches that I see are Australian. I mean, obviously there's Indonesian ones as well, but it's kind of unknown what a lot of these places look like. I don't see a lot of dive footage from these places. All right, ending the poll, you guys, in 3, 2, 1. Who's got it? Okay, so Texas, big winner. So we have we've got Texas, St. Louis at 26, the Carolina barbecues at 21, and Kansas City's at 10. I am shocked by that because I would argue that the Kansas City barbecue that I had was ridiculously nice. Yes, Luis, that's it. Yep, that's the park. I've been there a handful of times. I think like 2-3 times maybe. Really nice. It's a lot of fun. If you have a really big tank, you can keep a bull shark in brackish. Another Mexican story. I actually paid to do a dive to feed bull sharks. It's a pretty cool experience. Pretty cool experience. Like they're really, really large animals. Really large. Anna. Hi, Fan. I have an alveopora that has a dark coloration on the top of her skeleton. I've treated with Cipro and Revive. The dark thing is on the skeleton and can't be scraped off. A dark discoloration on the top of the skeleton. I'd have to see it, to be perfectly honest, because sometimes like a coral like alveopora, I've seen a lot where they come in kind of bleached looking to begin with. And what tends to happen is as they get healthier, they get darker. And they get darker non-uniformly. So you might have like a darker patch show up. And then eventually the whole thing just kind of like turns like a deeper shade of brown. But oftentimes, like when you see like these, excuse me, get the hiccups. When you see these like ghostly green, like ghostly, nearly translucent alveopora, it's because they might not have been in great health initially. And hopefully you didn't get that coral from us. But I'm trying to think, like, our alveo, like we haven't bought an alveopora that's currently in our farming system. in years, like literally years. We have one now in like in our coral QT, but that's the first one that we've bought like since like 2020 or something. Like that is just simply not a coral that we've done a lot with, and ours have pretty much hit um, like a stable coloration point. So if you got it from, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you got it from us then. And if it shows up with a black mark on in its flesh, what could that be? Nothing comes to mind for that. That would be really weird, but I'd have to see it. And I'm assuming you're not talking about like exposed skeleton that then turned black, because that could be very bad. But yeah. Bob Purcell, hello. Hello, Bob. Welcome. Joseph Posado, what is the most important trace element for a reef aquarium? I don't think that there is a most important. I think that you should be looking to hit pretty much all of them to the correct levels. The easiest way to do that is by doing water changes. The hardest way to do that is to take ICP tests that you trust the results for, and you dose very small amounts of it to try to hit normal levels. And that's very challenging to do because trace elements by their very nature are barely in the tank at all. They're in such vanishingly small quantities. So you have to have an ICP that you trust. That is a whole debate onto its own. There is the argument that ICP is not the ideal technology at all to even be doing this, but at least you're testing it in some way that's better than a hobby grade test kit. Maybe. But no, you really don't want to be focusing on like one trace element either. Like it's probably better just to like do more water changes, and that will kind of like get off of zero. Like my biggest worry when it comes to trace is that we have an element that has just bottomed out, and because it's bottomed out, a certain coral just starts crashing. Because like in a coral farm, you want stuff to grow quickly. The downside to stuff growing quickly is that it is going to deplete the most easily depleted resource. And in many cases, that's going to be trace elements, because again, it's barely there to begin with. So, food for thought. We have bull sharks all the way up to West Tennessee in the Mississippi River. Yeah, bull sharks they're highly resistant to brackish water. Practically fresh water. Not even practically, like definitely fresh water. I've heard that they've been found like a kilometer into a freshwater river and stuff. My friend saw a bull shark north of St. Louis on the river. He got a pic of the dorsal fin out of the water. Yeah, it's a shame that they're so nibbly because they're really, really, really pretty animals. Yeah, I paid a lot of money to do that dive. I thought it was super cool. But that there's a video of that, by the way. It's one of the least viewed videos on this channel. But if you search for like tidal gardens, bull sharks, you'll find it. They're cool. Okay. Tech gear talk. I guess no swimming in rivers. You should probably not want to swim in rivers because of toxic waste. Not so much the bull sharks. It's like great. I've been swimming in this river. Now I have a lump in my testicles. Eric, I really enjoyed your video you did with BRS about themed tanks. I have 2 tanks I'm starting to plan out, with the focus being on coral and fish that will thrive in 72-degree water. Yeah, again, do your research on that, because they might want it a little bit warmer than 72 degrees. But yeah, like a lower light Australian like deeper watered LPS tank is like super cool. Like the one that I saw at Jake's place at Reef Builders, it was inspirational because like That's a type of tank that we really couldn't have here because the enticement just to sell everything in it is too high for profit. But being able to collect really dope lower light, all blue light LPS and keep it in cooler water, probably with a chiller, could be very, very cool. And that could be. They are very cool. I've seen it. I've seen it with my own very eyes. Lord Thornton Eddington. Than. Will different candy cane variants sting each other? No, I don't think so. We have several different variants, and we have no issue keeping them close. I prefer manta rays, less nibbly. Let's talk about manta rays. I want to go to Hawaii, onto the Big Island, and dive with the manta rays. I was going to, then COVID happened, and I have had to cancel multiple trips to Hawaii, and I've never been back. So I really want to go back there and do that dive. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Because it's a nighttime dive, and I've never done a nighttime dive before. But they shine, they light the beam, and that attracts like all the plankton. And every night these manta rays do loops, and you just like sit there by the beam and watch. Patrick is asking, will calcifying macroalgae compete with coralline algae? Yes, it does. We've got into the habit now of, coralline is like the lesser of two evils. You want coralline to outcompete really problematic algae, but you don't want it in such quantities that it's going to inhibit stony coral growth, both chemically because it's soaking up too much of the calcium alkalinity, and you don't want it to also, because it can just like straight up overgrow and cover other corals. But it is better than like hair algae, for example. Also, Tech Gear Talk. I was over at his place because he was like cleaning out, doing like some spring cleaning. And we had met ages ago, probably like 15 years ago. And this is back when he was in the hobby. And I think that he has had his reef stuff in storage the entire time. And finally was just like, Than, do you want any of this stuff? And yeah, and so like, thank you so much for giving me all that stuff. We still have to clean it out and eventually hook it up. But I got like a cool sump from him. Got a couple of cool acrylic tanks because we actually do need that stuff because we want more ways to do quarantine and stuff, and to do like certain grow outs and stuff. So again, thanks for that. But it is funny because he had like a box of a flatworm exit that was probably like multi-decade expired. I'm like, it's time to clean that stuff out. Sewage treatment plants all dump into rivers, breeding ground for flesh-eating bacteria you hear about in the news. Yeah, but at least sewage treatment plants actually treated sewage. I don't know if industrial waste cares. Certainly not here in Ohio. I want to see the long, shallow themed tank. So this is Jordan asking. Want to see a long, shallow themed tank, vast sandbed, a couple of massive parietes, and just a big fleet of walking dendros. That'd be cool. Walking dendros are neat. We finally got some for the first time in a long time. Hopefully they're on our website for sale because I know that we have a few. But it was like about a year at least since we've seen them for sale. Dan, why is there so much debate about keeping Euphilia close together when it's been shown many times not to be a problem? If you're including hammers and frog spawn into that mix, I would probably disagree with you on that. Euphilia sting the other two guys quite a lot. If you look at the last like Euphilia quote unquote show tank video, I've got some footage in there where you can easily see like the Euphilia just like reaching out. It's like just hooked onto like a nearby hammer. Like it's definitely not ideal. And considering how like susceptible to brown jelly those things are, like if you start to stress those things out, you just might have like a bacterial issue on top of the aggression issue. So that's really why we kicked out all the torches out of our Euphilia tank to effectively make it a Fimbriophilia only system. Never seen candy canes included in the discussion, only the standard hammers, torches, frog spawn. Yeah, candy canes are, they're like pretty non-aggressive, period. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. Gulf Coast industrial waste goes through pretty rigorous treatment. Wouldn't drink it, but shouldn't be an issue for swimming in the rivers. Random thought, this is like a total tangent, but I know that like a lot of algae filtration methods are now being employed in wastewater treatment. And this has been going on for a long time, but I think it's being looked at a little bit more. And I'm thinking about doing a little bit more with algae-based systems myself. Currently, we have a clear water scrubber, and we have an algae reactor by Pax Bellum. And I would also like to try just one of these aquariums. You can get them like perfectly situated flow-wise, where you can just tumble macroalgae. Like you can tumble like the red stuff, and you just have it just growing there. And I don't want to like steal like Bulk Reef Supplies thunder, but they're doing a series on like refugiums and the best light for a refugium, which I thought was really kind of interesting because I never really thought about it. And they were doing like, again, these different spectrums of light, and they're like, this one in particular clearly grows the algae in the refugium better. And I'm looking at these 4 or 5 tanks, and I'm like, yeah, I'd agree with that, because one was clearly like, oh yeah. But yeah, I'm thinking about trying to do more with algae. Like my biggest issue is doing like the setup of it, because like a lot of our systems here, we're pretty space constrained, and yeah, just doing the setup is the problem in and of itself. But I want to try. JG, thank you so much for the super chat. This is weird. This is like the second show in a row that I actually got super chats for like the longest time. I used to like never get super chats, so always welcome. JG, corals grow in waters deeper than most home aquariums. Do you think the pressure of more water has an effect on coral growth? Does pressure? I don't know how susceptible stuff like that really would be, because like pressure affects us because we have like air chambers in our bodies, right? We have like a nasal passage, we have lungs, and when those get compressed, like a lot of crazy stuff starts to happen. Like when you go down to about like 100-ish feet, like your lungs are like the size of your fists. Like they're tiny now. Like your nasal passage, like you constantly have to like, pressurize out to like, do that. And it hurts. Like, hate to say it, guys, for all you like, I want to dive one day. Diving is a slightly painful experience. It's like a good kind of pain, but your joints hurt, especially if you're older. Like your joints hurt, your nose hurts, your chest to a lesser degree, but like that's how that stuff affects. But like an animal that is like at the same density of the outside water, I would imagine the pressure affects it less. So you might be thinking, what about whales, right? Because whales, they breathe air, then they dive to like 2,000, 4,000 feet or whatever, like whatever sperm whales do. So they have that giant head that's like full of like that delicious whale oil. So when that amount of fat that's in whales in general is a pressure management system in and of itself. It not only is like an insulator, right? But as a whale dives, this is what I actually learned in college, you guys. This is the only thing I remember from like chemistry class or biochemistry. Like once you dive, once it dives, like the cold and the pressure itself, it turns that fat into a solid. So the whale gets denser as it dives to manage the pressure. That's a cool little tidbit. To answer your question, I doubt it. I doubt pressure makes that much of a difference. And also, most corals are going to be harvested within the first 100 feet, and that's not really going to make it a very big impact, I don't think. Like, it's going to make a big impact on us. Like diving straight 100 feet straight down, that's going to suck. But a coral, I don't think is going to care. Okay. Okay, David E. Than, are there any corals aside from Montes and Acros that you would recommend for light over 200 par? Off the top of my head, Porites. When you go to, like the next time you guys go to Hawaii, y'all, and you go diving, in and around any of those reefs, especially Big Island, it is endless fields of Porites in about 5 feet of water, under about 2,000 par. A lot of like the really cool Porites are so for example, like my favorite Porites is probably like the bright canary yellow one, and you only get that canary yellow one when you blast it with light. Ours are kind of like a dusky mustard color right now because I don't think they're getting enough light. Ricardo Garcia, Than, is it possible that a Duncan coral may sting a candy cane? Yeah, I could see a Duncan stinging a candy cane. I don't think it's going to be like Duncans aren't mega aggressive in that way. They're not like they don't have like sweepers or anything like that. But I mean, a Duncan is a big, stingy looking boy, so it might. So if you dropped a raw chicken egg into the deepest part of the ocean, would it crush it? Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. I mean, like eventually everything gets crushed. Like if physics still works, it's gonna get crushed. Fan, how would you adjust for acceptable par levels between halides and LEDs? I know that the acceptable par under halides would burn the same coral under LEDs. It really depends. It depends a lot on the corals because if you guys like saw that BRS video, at one point I was talking about like there's tanks that back in the old days, in the old republic, there were tanks that had 1,000-watt halides for their acros, like 1,000-watt halides. They were bigger than street lamps. Back when street lamps were also not LED, they were giant metal halide lights. And that thing, you need its own air conditioner for its room for those things, and it's like thousands of par, thousands. So it's certainly possible to acclimate corals up to that level of lighting. I mean, you don't want to like put your like low light LPS in under that ever, but there is an adaptive process there because like right now we probably don't keep any acros under anything more than like 300, right? Arguably, we should be keeping them higher lighting. But yeah. Okay. Gary Venegas. Thank you, Polyp Lab, for standing behind Tidal Gardens. Awesome. No, it's so I haven't seen Phil from Polyp Lab in a while. We've like literally gone to trade shows this year where the other is not at. So like I think this upcoming Reefapalooza in New York, he's gonna be there, but I'm gonna miss it because that's my birthday weekend. There's uh, I went to Reefstock and I went to Aquashella, and he missed those two. It was like just passing ships. But yeah, we've had a good relationship with them. Like we very much like their powdered food, Reefroids, and we really like their coral dip. So I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent about coral dip. So yeah, a free commercial there, Phil. Okay, so the reason why I like Reef Primer is it's a potassium salt based dips, which is kind of different than some of like the tea tree oil type dips or whatever the heck is in Anticipate. Like so, in fairness, every one of these dips does what they do very well, and we use all of these different types of dips. But the reason specifically why I like Reef Primer is because, in my experience, it tends to be the most gentle. It is broadly effective on on a bunch of different things. Like it's not as effective as whatever is in Anticipate. Okay, Anticipate, like you put in like a thing with Monty eating nudibranchs, and that sucker kills it immediately, right? Uh, but just in my experience, like some of these other dips have been a little bit more harsh. Not like to the point where they're completely killing stuff, I don't think. But I think that when we ship corals out, they're already under a bit of stress. And I know that like 99.999% of all y'all don't have a quarantine tank at all. Ryan from BRS thinks that like 70% of you aren't even dipping at all. Like, let alone having a quarantine tank. You guys aren't even dipping. Don't do that. You should try to do something, right? Don't trust any vendor to put this hobby on rails for you. That is not a thing. Okay, protect your own tank. But the risk you run is that if you have a freshly shipped coral, it is going to be stressed out. Every dip is going to further stress out this animal, and oftentimes there's nothing wrong with that coral. And so the process of you trying to be proactive, which is good, is also the thing that's going to be killing this coral. And suddenly I have a DOA on my hands because the hobbyist kind of did the right thing, but it's like what's that phrase? Like the surgery was a success, but the patient died. So that's kind of what's happening here. It's like you first don't kill the coral, but in the process of being the responsible home hobbyist, you are dipping your incoming corals, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So again, the Reef Primer tends to be the dip that is less likely to kill your corals after a stressful shipping situation. So again, thanks to the corporate sponsors, Polyp Lab, number 1, Ecotech Marine, number 2, and while we're on the topic, let's go real quick from the community. The YouTube members, thank you all for your help. Keith Holland, Cvin13, JB Bryan, Terry Kuhn, Stories Reef, Herb777, Justin Harden, and 328 Reef. And the patrons on Patreon, you guys. Angela Sherman, Big Lord Chi, Brandy Camp, Harkins Aquatics, Jeremy Altman, aka 2 Please, Scott Williams, Elaine Martinassi, Alan Jackson, Ann Lewis, Chuck Admire, Ernie Wallace, Greg Bauer, Greg Zimmerman, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Kyle Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacry Fine Art, Lynn Holt, Michael Shelley, Puddle Aquatics, Ryan Baker, Sheila Owl, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. Thank you all so very much. And thank you guys again for hanging out with me. There's plenty of things to do on a Saturday afternoon, and you've chosen to spend it here, so I appreciate it. Okay. The point is equal pressure makes it hard to crush an egg. Yes. Harder. Eventually, though, stuff gets crushed. Okay. Jordan M. This is a random hot take. I hate that most coral print designs seem to be illustrated by artists who have never seen coral in their entire lives, or it's the jewelry red coral. Interesting. Yeah. Like you can tell when like somebody just doesn't know what anything is. It's like an AI generated coral, right? It's like, it's close. It's, it's got hands or something. It's like that slightly something is off about it, right? Patrick, can bristleworms be prevented with 12 months of QT? Maybe. To be perfectly honest, I kind of happen to like bristleworms. They do like a really good job of handling detritus and uneaten food and stuff. Like the guys here, they don't like it because they don't know how to like not get stung by a bristleworm. But I tend to like, you know what? Okay, I like worms in general. Like I try to save worms that are like on my driveway when it rains, like stuff like that. So maybe it's just me. I just like worms. Let's see. Thanks for the SIPO treatment for shriveled acan micros. Magically, they're better. Last question. Do you have experience with peroxide dipping? Killed some corals over spotting the DT display tank. Okay, so peroxide. That's a toughie, okay? Because we use peroxide sparingly here. Because it tends to be like, again, talking about dips, the harshest dip is like peroxide. It's like so aggressive. And again, I don't know like what concentrations you use and whatnot. But where we would want to mess with peroxide is if we know the coral is super hardy and we're trying to like knock out specifically like a type of like macroalgae that's like problematic, like a red turf or like ulva or something where we're just real sick of this. We will practically like use a heavier concentration of peroxide and just with like a brush just put it on what we wanted to treat and not touch the coral, and then put it into a dip of peroxide that's like very, very low key. And again, that's like, we wouldn't do that with like an acro. We would do that with like a zoa, that sort of stuff, because you can blast the heck out of stuff with peroxide. Like maybe we just haven't found like the right technique to use it, but some people, they like to put it into their tank, like period, like to just into their display tank as an oxidizing agent. What we've chosen to do for oxidizing is to go straight to ozone. We've had like great experiences with ozone, but yeah, peroxide, not my favorite. It's the same for people who reef but have never seen coral in the ocean. It's usually brown. Yeah, that is a thing, and unfortunately, a lot of it is usually dead. Yeah, hate to be that dude, but chances are, okay, if you are going on a dive with a commercial dive company, which most of us are going to be doing. If we're doing anything, you should do that because the number one goal should be you get back on the boat alive, right? It's going to be in places that are relatively close to civilization, and civilization and coral reefs do not mix at all. Like Oahu, fun city to be at in Hawaii. Worst place to go look at corals, and it's not that close. It's just trash. Like right outside like that hotel zone, you want to rent like a snorkeling mask. I'll save you the time. Don't. There's nothing to see. All that stuff is going to be garbage dead. Hanauma Bay looks cool from like a postcard. In person, it is trash. Humans and coral don't mix in that way. But if you want to see like great diving, perhaps like the best diving, one of the best spots on Earth, I guess, on the island of Kauai. And I don't mind telling you this because it's not a secret. There's an island out there in Kauai that it is 4 hours there, 4 hours back. It is choppy seas. You might not be the type to get motion sick, but you're gonna have a miserable time getting out there and getting back. It is pure suffering. And but because it is so challenging to get out there, the reefs are practically pristine. The fish are like jumbo sized. Like it's like you just like kind of like drag the screen and did one of those things, right? Like there's parrotfish that are like 5 feet long. It looks like that type of stuff. It's almost like a lost world situation where like, wow, there's like a brontosaurus underwater here. It's like that kind of stuff, and it's because people can't get there. Or if the people do get there, you're like hardcore like Navy SEAL types that want to really get out there, because it's not just going to be some random tourist that just happened to be staying at Waikiki the night before. That ain't happening. Or it is happening and they're just going to be freaking green, just barfing and feeding the fish for you. It's because you read Dune. Worms are cool. Yeah, Dune's awesome. That is not no lies told. Ronnie Johnson, I love anemones, but it's hard to find consistent info about how to care for non-rose bubble tip anemones. Yeah. Like the bubble tips are clearly going to be like the most popular. You have to kind of be a little bit more of a specialist to get into some of the others. Yeah. Courtney Jameson, have you ever experienced Kermit the Frog acro form purple tips as it's growing? Kind of worried it's algae, but could just be new growth. My guess is it's probably new growth, and especially if you see a terminal polyp. Like if you look at the very tip of the acro, there should be a polyp there. It might be light, because again, growth tips typically are lighter, but that's how you know that the coral is doing well. If it has like a nice little terminal polyp. It's like, yep, that's what I did. We went to the lower portion of the coral reef and didn't see much. Yeah, or just in general, you have to go where people aren't. For example, the Big Island. The Big Island, one of my favorite places, to be perfectly honest. Couple of reasons, okay? I love the coffee there. I love Hawaiian coffee. I love Kauai coffee. I love Kona coffee. And like that's where all like the coffee plantations are. And they'll just be like, here's like a coffee tasting right here. It's like so fresh and it's delicious. Kona in particularly I liked because like there's so few people there that I remember like looking just from the land, looking into the water and seeing porites like inches away from my toes, like that sort of thing. And there's like a Captain Cook memorial, and you can like do some snorkeling there, and it's like amazing snorkeling. And even then, that's kind of like a touristy thing, but it's incredible. But then I remember like just like looking at the waves, and you can see these waves, and when the sun hits it from the back, it's like that scene in Moana where like you can see like the coral reef, like a silhouette of the coral reef, and you can see a silhouette of all the fish. Like it's so freaking cool. You will not see that at Waikiki. You will not see that from a hotel. You kind of have to like get out where like there just aren't very many beeps. Ronnie Johnson, how is the anemone display tank? It's doing really well. We kicked out a fish that was being too much of a jerk because we had some aptasia growing in the anemone tank, and we wanted to put in a copper band. And this freaking powder blue was just such a jerk, and we eventually just had to catch him, and we have him in isolation. By the way, if anybody local, okay, that can come here, wants a powder blue tang that's really big and pretty, but also a jerk as powder blues are, he would be very inexpensive to a good home. Let's just say, like shockingly inexpensive to a good home. But I'd like to, make sure that you're not going to put him in like a tiny, tiny, tiny aquarium. Like he was in like a 250, and he should probably be in something a little bit bigger. He's also a jerk, fair warning. But yeah, it's a gorgeous fish. I don't want him. And it's not even fair to the fish. It's like he's doing what the thing is supposed to do, right? He's not supposed to be a nice fish. He's supposed to be a mean, ornery, acantharous tang. But otherwise, the anemone tank is doing well. Now that he's gone, we're able to go in there and get that copper band settled in, and now there's no more aptasia. It's wonderful. Again, favorite fish, copper band butterfly, not that close. This live show went by fast. We're almost done. I think we're only going to go up to 2:19. So, any last minute questions and comments? Now's the time. Gary, hey Than, for everyone in between paydays, remind me of the. I can't talk. I can't even read. Hey Than, for everyone in between paydays, remind the gang of your new My Wish list. There you go. It took me a while. Like my brain just stopped functioning. You know what I think I need? I need to find a food truck. Apparently, it's like I'm probably low on calories right now. Yeah, clownfish and sohals are evil. Yep, I've owned clowns before. I've never owned a sohal. They're just too mean. The only acantharous tang that I really like to have that does functional good in my systems is the convict. Like they stay relatively small. Like a sohal is gigantic, like 18 inches or something, and it's 18 inches of like dangerous. Like eventually they're gonna slash you, and then somebody's gonna think that you you offed yourself because of like how much blood that thing's gonna let. But no, like the little guys, that little tiny convict tang, you just need one. Don't go crazy. Don't try to have a school of these things. Just need one. And that thing is a spaz, and it just eats algae all day. Wonderful herbivore. So as far as like tangs that I like for herbivorous activity, okay, I like those guys. I like Tamini tangs. Tamini stay relatively small and manageable. Love those guys. So right now we're trying like the Tamini trios, as I'll call them. Just put 3 of them into a tank, and they seem to work everything out pretty nicely. They're not hyper aggressive, and they stay small. Like I said, the one acantharous. You can mess with the zebrasomas. I mean, we have them here. Occasionally they can be a little bit ornery, but it's not the end of the world. So like a couple yellow tangs. Just make sure that they have enough rocks so that they're not like completely malicious. Some argument for having a naso if your tank is big enough. Like we got a couple of blonde nasos in quarantine now. They're tiny, but supposedly they do a halfway decent job with like bubble algae. And they're not fox faces, which can be kind of impactful because fox faces can get a little bit very nibbly. Anyway, that, you guys, is almost it. Hopefully, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks again for spending time. And this show will go on for at least a few days. Typically, we like to ship Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and by Wednesday we'll probably take the sale down. But if you guys were on the fence about anything, you do have like a few days to pick and choose still. Um, and sometime between tomorrow and Monday, we will get in touch with most of you and get you on the shipping calendar. So that's it from here, y'all. Happy reefing. And until next time, which, by the way, speaking of next time, you can see the entire year's schedule of these shows now. So you can see which ones you can hit, and we can hang out again. All right, that's it. Happy reefing again.